So it's been a minute since I dropped a review. Just wanted to do a bit of a recap on the last few weeks as it relates to the strawweight and the light flyweight divisions. There's been a few good fights at both of those weight classes. First off, back on March 6th, you had Tamanu Nyomchong, aka Knockout CP Freshmart, successfully defending his WBA title against Toto Landero of the Philippines in a bit of a tougher fight than a lot of people expected. Really, for all intents and purposes, Knockout CP Freshmart should have probably scored a knockout over Landero. He should have had a easier time with him. But I'm not sure what it is with Freshmart. He's a guy that I think because he has a cool sounding name, people like to talk him up to a certain degree. He's gotten a bit more publicity than he necessarily deserves in comparison to the other fighters at strawweight. You have Wenham Naoten, the WBC champ, who's 49-0 currently. You have Hiroto Kyoguchi, and you have Ryuya Yamanaka, who I'll get to in just a second. But yeah, he had some definite issues with Landero. He does have good wins over Buitrago and the somewhat controversial one over Baron Rojas. And it looks like he may wind up having to defend his title against Rojas coming up here soon, since Rojas is the mandatory. However, it's looking like his absolute next fight will wind up being against former champion from China, Zhang Chaozhong, who was actually a world champion before Zhou Shiming ever was. He's actually the first ever world champion boxer from China. But moving on, Yuya Yamanaka managed to successfully defend his WBO strawweight championship against Moises Calleros. He did manage to make Calleros retire in the corner. Calleros himself is a former title challenger, really good fighter, guy that lost very close against Tatsuya Fukuhara for the title when it was initially vacated. Fukuhara defeated him by split decision, somewhat controversially. I thought Calleros could have gotten it. Here, though, Yamanaka really showed out after having a close fight himself against Fukuhara. He made it a lot more clear, a lot more emphatic against Calleros. He's shown, at the age of 22, he's still growing a bit. He'll probably be, he'll be 23 here in a couple of weeks. So, he's a young gun looking to try and show and prove. He has a couple of losses, as he did, as some fighters do on the come up, but he didn't let that sway him from otherwise becoming a world title contender and now a champion. And it was a good victory. It was a really good victory. I think combining the Calleros and the Fukuhara victories, reasonably speaking, you can rate him over Knockout CP Freshmart, the aforementioned, due to that. It's two really good names on his record. Whereas Freshmart, even though he has a better overall body of work in terms of the fighters that he's fought overall, his recent performances have been lacking, to put it pretty frankly. On that same card as Yamanaka versus Calleros was Carlos Canizales fighting against Rhea Konishi. Konishi at the time was 15-0. Canizales was 19-0-1. Konishi, they were fighting for a vacant WBA regular light flyweight title, and I put regular in air quotes. You can't see it, but Canizales had previously given a really tough time to the current unified champion, the current unified WBA Super and IBF champion at light flyweight, Ryoichi Taguchi, the guy that's basically the man of the division. He's the clear number one fighter at light flyweight, bar no one. But Canizales ran him really close a little over a year ago. He fought him on New Year's Eve of 2016 going into 2017. And managed to hold him to a draw, and he's basically now managed to fight his way back into contention in terms of being a mandatory whenever the WBA happens to mandate that. Hopefully they do sooner or later. They're having guys fight for vacant belts that they were supposedly trying to consolidate beforehand. Hopefully it happens. But he had a really good fight against Konishi. Konishi was, like I said, he was a young up and coming top prospect coming out of Japan. He was the Japanese strawweight champion, so he was the domestic champion. And similar to in the UK, where becoming a domestic champion at a given weight class, there's a high degree of prestige in that, because you really pretty much have to fight the best fighters in Britain in order to be able to achieve that. It's the same way in Japan, especially at the lighter weight classes, where there's a very, very big talent pool of Japanese fighters, pretty much between strawweight and featherweight. So, strawweight, light flyweight, becoming a light flyweight Japanese champion, that's something to be regarded by a certain manner of circumspect, I guess you might say. But Canizales managed to outpoint him, managed to hurt Konishi a couple of times, and he got the victory. And so I'm really hoping that Canizales is able to get his rematch against Taguchi, because had Taguchi not been able to unify against Milan Melindo this past year, there would have been a rematch between Taguchi and Canizales, and then Heki Butler would have wound up fighting Milan Melindo. Now, as it stands, Heki Butler is actually the IBF mandatory for actually no, he's not the IBF mandatory. I guess he would probably be the secondary mandatory to Taguchi behind Felix Alvarado, who is the current mandatory, if I'm remembering correctly. Felix Alvarado recently just got a first round knockout, nasty knockout. Felix Alvarado, a fighter that only previously lost to Kazuto Yoka, and I think he had one other loss. Can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but really good fighter. Probably the single hardest puncher at light flyweight, aside from maybe Angel Acosta. But the two of them are the type of fighters that, as long as they're standing up, as long as they're upright, they're dangerous. They may be able to end the fight at any moment, simply because they pack the level of power that people typically don't kind of associate with lighter weight classes. They have that kind of Street Saket or Naoya Inoue-esque eraser, as it were, in their pocket, that they could just pull out at any moment. And they've knocked out some guys that are normally very durable, and normally are the type of fighters that even if they lose against top opposition, are going the distance with them. So that's pretty much my recap of the goings on in March at strawweight and light flyweight. It's looking like Kenshiro is going to be coming up here in a few weeks against Ganigan Lopez, defending his WBC light flyweight belt. Nothing in the cards necessarily for Wenheng Manayoten in the near future, trying to get that 50-0. I'm sure they're trying to make that a pretty big event, so they're probably in the planning stages for that over in Thailand. Trying to make a big deal out of it. And they should. Try to market him, maybe cross promote him on an international stage a bit more so, in a manner to capitalize off of the greater attention that Sri Saket Sarongvasai, the WBC super flyweight champion, has brought to Thailand as a nation, as a fighting country, in the sport of boxing. I definitely think that they can capitalize off that in a pretty good fashion. Even though Wenheng and Nakatsuki Freshmart are of a different promotional company compared to Sri Saket. But good fights, good fighters. Naopan Pochokchai is back in the mix at super flyweight, and then I know Hiroto Kyoguchi, they're talking about him as the IBF champion, possibly unifying against the aforementioned Ryuya Yamanaka, the WBO champion. So we may get a unification at strawweight pretty soon too. It's not unlike what it's looking like at light flyweight, where some of these champions are trying to consolidate, try to unify. If Kenshiro manages to successfully defend his belt against Ganigan Lopez, I'm sure that we'll wind up seeing Shiro versus Taguchi in a fight for 3 of the 4 belts. And I wouldn't be surprised if Angel Acosta would be right behind in trying to further unify that against the winner. So that's going to do it for this one. I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.